The first thing the athlete is going to want to know, and the parents are going to want to know, is, Doc, when can I go back? When can I play again? We came up with this metric of a visual to help the patient understand what must be achieved in order for them to meet the criteria for recovery. And so we did it like a bullseye. This is the very first thing they see in their report of findings is, okay, when everything is in the green area, we know you're back to where you are, where your brain is functioning optimally and basically needs minimal work to get back. But you see at the 12 o'clock position, we have the return to play criteria. And then at about the 7 o'clock position, we have the return to learn. So this is an actual patient case history. So what exactly are the criteria for recovery? The discussion that we're going to have now is based on the British Journal of Sports and Exercise Medicine, and this was from the Berlin Conference of 2017, the International Consensus Conference on Concussion in Sports, the fifth such conference. That's why you'll see SCAT 5, Child SCAT 5 recommendations. What exactly are the return to play criteria? What does this mean? You've probably heard that most concussions recover in 7 days, 7 to 10 days, but the question is, who came up with this idea? What criteria did they use to come to this conclusion? From the British Journal of Sports Medicine that published the criteria from the Berlin Conference on concussion management on the sidelines, this infographic was created by the British Medical Journal, suggesting the recovery progression that occurs after concussion. It's a very detailed infographic. You can download it, as you can see on the bottom, or you can request it from us, or just do a search online. But here's the most important thing, is that their conclusion was the minimum time between injury and return to activity with a predictable risk of head impact was 23 days in children and 19 days in adults. So this notion of most concussions recover in 7 days is not true, and it is totally dependent on the examination protocols that are done. Now let's look at a few more details about how long does it take to recover from a concussion. In 2015, in the Molecular and Cellular Neurosciences, they showed that neuropathological evaluation shows that concussion-induced axonopathy may persist for years. 2009 brain injury. Adolescent athletes fail to comply with return-to-play guidelines. In football, 15.8% with a concussion and loss of consciousness return to play in less than a day. Males, 12.6%, females, 5.9%. They return to play in 1 to 2 days after a grade 2 concussion. Now you'll note this is old terminology that we're no longer going to use, as you will find out shortly. R2P is short form for return to play, R2L is short for return to learn, and R2D is return to drive. So when you see those short forms, it's so that we don't have to keep writing out those words. Asian Journal of Sports Medicine in 2014. In professional rugby players, they found that 33 of the 35 were able to return to play in 22.1 days, and the median return to play was 21 days, but as high as 45 days. With respect to neurocognitive functioning, the Journal of the Canadian Academy of Sports Medicine found that there was slow recovering concussions. There was 18 times more likely to have 3 unusually low neuropsychological test scores. So again, goes back to the questions like, how'd they come up with that 7 to 10 days? What were they measuring, or was it just based on there was no symptoms? Clinical Pediatrics 2017, post-concussion sleep disturbances cause 3 to 4 times an increase in the recovery time. So are you questioning your athletes what their sleep habits are like after the concussion? What were their sleep habits like before the concussion? One of the things I want to add here is like how many children sleep with a cell phone under their pillow or beside their pillow. So now you're getting these electromagnetic fields that can affect their brain too. When we talk about blood-brain barrier and treatment options, one of the first things you need to do is get the cell phone, that magnetic radiation, away from the head, because this will not only disturb sleep, but it will accentuate inflammation and can cause problems with the blood-brain barrier. Clinical Neurophysiology, the official journal of the International Federation of Clinical Neurophysiology in 2012, shows that residual brain dysfunction can be observed up to 1 year after the injury, and they measured a electroencephalogram to determine this, and they did a number of studies on each individual athlete, but they found that there was still problems in the EEG, specifically the alpha wave, that was abnormally functioning up to 1 year after a concussion. Orthopedic Journal of Sports Medicine in 2018 found that the concussion recovery time for return to play in all groups was an average of 29.4 days, men at 24.7 days, women at 35.5 days. United States Air Force Academy did a study that was published in Orthopedic Journal of Sports Medicine in 2018, and they found that concussion average mean return to play was 29.4 days, and this was concussions of women and men and non-elite athletes. The medical staff at the Military Academy logged a total of 512 concussion medical records over 38 months. Of these, 414 records included complete return-to-play protocols with return-to-play time, sex, athletic status, cause, and other data. 29.4 days average return to play. Brain injury in 2017, reporting on returning to work, what they found was greater than 50% of patients that had concussions cannot work 2 weeks after mild traumatic brain injury. 26% failed to return to work 4 weeks after mild traumatic brain injury. And what they found was the work quotient was significantly associated with the educational levels and post-concussion signs and symptoms of headaches and dizziness. Total of 179 participants, 132 patients with mild traumatic brain injury and 47 healthy controls. The Work Quality Index was developed to evaluate work quotient. All patients were evaluated for post-concussive syndrome, neuropsychological functions, and work quotients at 2 weeks post-injury and were recorded 1 month post-injury. Again, more than half the patients were not able to return to their pre-injury jobs at 2 weeks, and 26% still failed to regain previous work levels at 4 weeks post-injury. So their conclusion was simultaneous considering working status and stability to reveal the quality of return to work is merited. Higher educational level might be a protective factor for successful return to work, and ameliorating physical symptoms is also necessary to get favorable work quotient by 1 month after mild traumatic brain injury. So the more educated the person was, the higher the probability it was for them to return to work faster. The lower the educational person would take longer to return to work, and they were less motivated to return to work. This is one of my favorite studies. It was published in the American Journal of Sports Medicine in 2015. It was done by Major League Baseball, and what they found was that concussions impair balance, visual acuity, and reaction time, all of which are required for high-level batting performance. And what they did was between 2007 and 2013, they looked through the disabled list records and the Baseball Prospectus database. For comparison, they identified players who went on paternity or bereavement leave during the same period as a control group versus those that had sustained a concussion. And what they found was that when they had returned to play. There was no symptoms after a concussion. There was alteration in performance. So if you're a baseball fan, you'll understand acutely what these statistics mean. So they had significantly decreased batting average, significantly decreased on-base percentage, significantly decreased slugging percentage, and significantly decreased on-base plus slugging percentage. If you're not a baseball fan, what this means is that's the difference between someone being a Major League Baseball star and someone who's in the minor leagues for their entire life. So what did they measure? This study just measured their batting performance pre and post concussion. No symptoms, you're good to go back. Apparently not. This brings us to the point of, okay, what examination considerations do we need to include for return to play? Well, this is where I come up with the concussion matrix, and in order for an athlete to recover, he must properly be examined. All areas of the injury must be examined, and the less you examine, the greater the likelihood of slower recovery. The absence of symptoms does not equate to the speed of recovery or the completeness of recovery. Here's the matrix I created, and there are 4 things that happen in every concussion injury. You have a vestibular injury, injury to the pituitary stalk, we have neuroinflammation developing, and we have a metabolic cascade. We should also add to this there's an upper cervical or a cervical spine component as well.